Welcome, everyone, today to our first of what we hope will be a series of workshops addressing accessibility in filmmaking called Lights, Camera, Accessibility. Filmmaking for and by the deaf and hard of hearing community is what today's event is about. I want to thank our panelists and our interpreters for being here today and talking about their experiences and sharing what it's like being a deaf and or hard of hearing filmmaker. I'm Maya Jerem. I'm the Northern Colorado branch chair of WIFMCO. WIFMCO is Women in Film and Media Colorado. We work towards increasing parity and equity across all gender expressions, and identities in film, filmmaking, television, and all sorts of media. I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors, the Fort Collins Public Media, as well as the Colorado Film Office for making this possible. I would also like to thank, I've already thanked them, but I want to take a moment and make sure that we introduce our panelists who are here today to talk about their experiences. So first, I would like to introduce and ask that Nikki would introduce herself and tell us about her bio.
Yes, hello everyone. So I'm Nikki Runge, and I'm the founder of Just a Deaf Mother. It's a blog plus a website, or web series rather, where I have different vlogs with cooking, performance, written stories with my Coda daughter, child of deaf adults, Coda. And so she does hear and speak. She's hearing, and I'm deaf, and we work together. And I founded Just a Deaf Mother probably in 2019. It was just a hobby, is all it was, until after 2020, I realized it was time to change it into a career. And so I took some screenplay writing classes for script writing, and I took a class for filmmaking, how to edit, how to work with different crews, and how to produce. And then I also got hired by Quiet Mile Productions. And so I became a producer there, plus a writer with my partner, whose name is Martina Bell. She is the owner of Quiet Mile Productions Pictures. And so I've been working for a long time now, uh, really involved and in depth with filmmaking since 2021. So I'm definitely still learning. But I, have been involved in different films in California and just all over. I actually just got my SAG-AFTRA license as well. So yeah, that's me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Joette, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and giving us your bio.
Hi, my name is Joette Paulone. This is my name sign, Joette. And I'm not a filmmaker. I'm more of an actor. I am involved a lot in acting. Nikki was one of my directors, as well as Ruthie. She's directed me in the past. Really, it started when I was a little girl. I had a dream. My dad was a musician, and so he said, "You could go on the stage, go show the world who you are." And so my dad asked me to dance cha-cha with me, and then it just kind of evolved from there. And I realized my passion and that I can do it. So that was kind of where my start was. Nikki asked me to be involved in films with her. The film, what was the name of that? A Coda Girl. That was her daughter. She was involved in that one, and I got to be the mother in that, grandmother in that film. My apologies. And then Ruthie asked me to be involved in the Rocky Mountain Deaf Film Festival. C was an Italian chat that was involved in the Rocky Mountain Deaf Film Festival. It was an Italian chat. There was no script in that. It was all improv. And so we went based on our experiences. I did live in Philadelphia in the past, and there was a deaf man that had his own business, and they were fascinated with that. And so it wasn't really an interview, it was more of a chat. It was a bakery in Philadelphia that the gentleman owned. And he also founded a deaf club there and deaf picnics as well. So Ruthie decided to make a film and asked me to be involved in it. Again, there was no script. I just went based on experience and improv. And then I'd have to look at my bio. So that's about it. That's me in a nutshell.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And last but not least, I'm drawing Ruthie. Sorry. Early morning for me. Ruthie, thank you so much for being here. Would you mind telling us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Ruthie, and I originally grew up in Wisconsin. My parents are deaf. I have a deaf sister, and then I moved here 15 years ago. But I've been, I founded the Rocky Mountain Deaf Film Festival, RMDFF, and so that started in 2022. We just, it's biannual, so we just had our second film fest. And yeah, we've been going through with that, and I can explain more about that later. But as far as how I fell in love with filmmaking, it goes all the way back to when I was little because I was watching my dad. He was doing film on 16 millimeter, 18 millimeter, and he would edit it by hand. And so I sat there watching him making these films, and I got his perspective being deaf, so I saw it through the deaf lens. And I grew up seeing all of his filming, his angles, and then I went to deaf school and actually bought a camera and would, direct kids, basically, like tell them what to do, and we would make these play films and animation. So it wasn't like, I was just filming as a kid, like VHS tapes and editing. And then I got to college and got even more involved in film. I was totally involved in theater and film, and then ended up producing a Law and Order film. Oh, I was involved in the production of Law and Order. So I was helping make a film with that and got that experience, and then came back to here now. I've been more involved with deaf locals for the deaf community, filming things there and producing. I do my productions, and I also work with hearing companies as well. So I am here and invested in the deaf film community to be able to increase that lens.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Now, I was wondering if presently or in the past, any one of you have worked with hearing, cast, crew, and productions. And if so, what have been your biggest challenges when you work with hearing, cast, crew, and productions?
Well, with my most recent experience, it was very recent, and it was my first time being involved in a film production in Oregon. And, it was a large mix of deaf and hearing people working together. And I didn't really see any barriers that I can think of. It was a very smooth process. I mean, there were 10 interpreters there. We had hearing people everywhere as well. I mean, there were some deaf people. We had like an ASL translator there, deaf ASL translator, but it was very deaf friendly. And, I can't really speak to past experiences. Like I wonder maybe Ruthie has more experience than I do on that. But yeah, I mean, I was really impressed with just how smooth everything was when I was involved in that film. And there was like film jargon when I was there. Like they'd do this 2 thumbs up thing, and that meant it was time to perform. I thought it meant it was time to perform. They were like, no, hold off. They were doing their own like signs, and then they were like, we're rolling, and then go. So I had to learn their way of signing these things. So that was new to me. But that was just this past summer. So that was, I'm still learning, and I mean, yeah, but I really can't imagine just having like being one deaf person in like a sea of a hearing cast and crew for a production. I think that'd be a lot more challenging for sure. But mine, we had a good mix. Probably like I'd say 20 or 25% of deaf folks there were deaf, and then it was like maybe 70 to 80% hearing cast and crew as well. So I mean, yeah. So really.
Joette, Ruby?
From my experience with any challenges, I haven't, directed a film myself, so I don't have that. But I've seen and heard stories that people have been frustrated and had challenges. Some were interpreting challenges. I've seen interpreters, I prefer my interpreter to have an experience and a background in theater. They can understand where it's coming from, and they have that ability to express the emotions and to be able to follow the emotions of a film. And I'm lucky to have had these two in the past. And so that's been something that I've seen is I want my interpreters to have that experience. I know one gentleman named Peter Wolf. He was 1960s to 1970s. He was the first deaf gentleman to be a director and a writer in California. I know he had so many frustrating experiences and barriers. And they said, there's a lot of history with him, and I've learned so much from him. He's been a pioneer. So I'm not sure if he's still making films or not, but going on.
And then, yeah, I would kind of support what we're hearing from them. I mean, nowadays it's so much better. We have seen a lot of improvements to accessibility. They will bring in, like an ASL translator. They'll call them like a DASL, like Director of American Sign Language, to be able to help with translation. And they're having more deaf people involved. And, productions are really opening up. The hearing industry is opening up to more deaf people, and there's fewer barriers. Now, when I was involved with Law and Order with that film production, it was pretty wonderful. We had a few people who could sign, and it was a big production. And, so I didn't really have that kind of access back then. We just sort of went through, and it was just like, if you could find someone who was deaf to support, you'd reach out. But it did take a lot of reaching out and being involved in a hearing production. Everything's audio based, and they're just depending on their ears, and I'm a deaf person, so I didn't major in audio. I majored in film in general and just how all that's conducted. So that's a barrier automatically, and it's like then we just have to drop the film because it's all on audio. But meanwhile, people are investing. They wanted me to like invest in hearing aids and make audio my field, but that's a huge barrier. And also financial barriers, budgeting. Money talks. So, they don't want to invest in interpreters. They want to say, well, how would we do that? We have to bring an interpreter in. And so deaf people end up becoming not prioritized because of budgeting things. And they may just be put in the background of a film. They're not going to be like a lead person. So these kind of barriers have come up. And those are still around today.
Also, from my experience in ASL films, I was involved in a production called Black Sand. The producer, the script, everything was made for a deaf cast. And so really it was pretty easy. And the director was deaf, and based on what their experiences were, mine was a little different with Black Sand, and that was in Costa Rica. We were on an island. It was so humid and so hot there. And so we'd have to wash the lens of the film, or wash the lens of the camera, because it got so foggy and condensed. And so that wasted time in our production there, but we got through it. So I remember that.
Now, what would you say your best experiences have been on set? What makes an experience memorable for you as a filmmaker in a good way?
So my best experience is when doors open, you know, having access, having opportunities, because I'm on November 24th, I'm going to be 50. So, you know, it's like basically I'm reaching half a century and I've spent half a century on stage. So, now that I'm going to be 50, I'm finding myself transitioning to film and making a career out of that. And there was a particular person, my business partner, Chris Catcher, who lives here, a mentor. I'm really thankful to him because we have been able to, we made a stage theater company. And, that's who suggested I should be on camera. And I hate being on camera. I really always preferred stage. I am not comfortable, just like what we're doing now with all these cameras. But he told me, you should break this barrier, open your mind. And that's, that really got me thinking. And I started to practice. And that's why I ended up starting my blog and, my web series with my friend filming. And then, my daughter actually hates stage, believe it or not, whereas she loves the camera. So she's totally opposite of me. So, I'm trying to, like my friend just suggested that I go in and had, this Hollywood level access to a film. And then now here I am with the cameras in my face, like very close up, surrounded by all this. And I was like, wow, you know what? I like that better than the stage. I really prefer that to the stage because on stage, you have to keep acting constantly. The audience is always there. Whereas on film, if you make a mistake, you start again and you can start again and again. And it just, it really kind of changed my interest, changed my path from away from the stage. So yeah, I actually definitely still am involved with the stage. And, you know, as I'm getting older, I just feel like I'm kind of ready to hand that off to the next generation, the stage part, and support them and encourage them. And meanwhile, I'm learning more about the film industry. So I think my favorite experience is this transition, and it's thanks to Chris. So I'm really grateful to him.
I've experienced with that black sand film I was mentioning before. She's right. I mean, with film, you can do it again. You can run lines. If you make a mistake, you can go back and change what needs to be changed. But that movie really made me realize that looking at myself, I kind of felt like I needed to express myself and have a mask on when I did that. But behind the scenes, it is really emotional. I mean, there was fighting, there was crying, there was drama. I felt like I was hugging everybody. Some people were sick, and but that's real. I feel like that should be on stage, not behind the scenes. That is the emotion I want people to bring. But I really enjoyed that. It was 3 months of a process getting that film to production, but I enjoyed that. I really liked that experience.
Yeah. Also, and I had a really good experience. My best experiences have been with deaf people, because filmmaking is so cool. Like they say, you can pause, you can go back if you need to redo something. If you have a funny moment, you can capture that on film. And I absolutely love being creative with editing. You'll see we can make sign language really equal to spoken language. You can do different things with it. You can speed it up, you can go back and forth. So I love thinking about the structure and how I'm going to set everything with the film. And so, for example, you can, zoom in, have something get bigger with editing. You can bring something closer. So I love thinking about those different things and working with deaf people using sign language. I feel like there's no obstacles that way, no oppression. I just am myself. Truly, I can be my full creative self and reach that potential. And it's inspirational. I see you guys like Joette was talking about Cosme, the Italian chat that we did. We just had cameras set up and we just said, go for it. And, so it was sort of, basically considered live. So that was a challenge. Then I had to think about how I was going to do that. I wanted one camera set up to catch this angle and one camera for another angle. And then we'd have them go. And it was an all day thing. When editing, I had to pick the certain different parts that I wanted. And like I zoomed in on her, like waving her face and got super close there. So that makes the audience laugh, you know, because deaf people get it. It's their culture, their language that they're seeing there. And so that's really, you know, I have a passion for that and I definitely greatly enjoy that. Yeah.
I want to add a little bit more about how sign language, you know, all over the world, there is sign, but then in the US specifically, there's regional signs. And so I'm from Philadelphia. And then Cosmo, he's from Philadelphia as well. And they have their own sign language there, that regional signs. And so people might watch different films and say, oh, what is that sign? What is that sign? But there is regional signs and they're all different throughout the US. So that was fun. And we have to keep that. And I hope that doesn't fade away. I hope those regional signs stay prevalent.
And I would add something interesting for me, you know, is like while on stage, you have to sign so big. You have to really raise those elbows, sign big. For film, sometimes I'm in the habit of stage stuff. Ruth says, yeah, that's true. So like my ASL coach when I was filming was like, hey, Nikki, let's bring those signs down a little bit. We are not on stage here. We are filming. You're on film. So I had to shrink it back down to like a regular sign size. But, you know, they're just like sign normal, you know, there's no audience to have to see you. So just relax, sign normally. And I, you know, I had to totally change gears and throw out my stage habits to be on film like that. So yeah. And then Ruthie says, yeah. And I would add also facial expressions too. Oh yeah. Nikki says, yeah, with sign language, a lot of the grammar is on the face. Facial expressions important, but when you're filming, you know, on stage, very big facial expressions, just like your signs. And if you're filming, you can just do the most subtle, like change of the eyebrows and they're zoomed in on your face. So that's going to show more emotion and be more powerful than going all big, right? You just want to do like a tiny little motion. And that's a challenge to make that adjustment. It really is. Yeah. So we have to get used to that. That says true.
Okay. So we have 3 different filmmakers who have been working for various amounts of time in various capacities. Even in a short period of time, for example, for Nikki, especially post-pandemic, I'm curious just for all of the durations of your respective film careers, how has film evolved above and beyond what you've already talked about as filmmakers, be it in front of or behind the camera? Is there anything about that that you'd like to comment on?
Ruthie says, oh yeah. I mean, one big change that I've seen, you know, before when I was filming, before the pandemic, I was teaching kids at Rocky Mountain Deaf School. And so I taught them film tech and the kids would play and be so creative. It was all very interactive and fun. And then, you know, leading up to it, you know, then YouTube came. And then after COVID, YouTube took off. I mean, the amount of students I see just like on their phones filming themselves and, you know, the film language structure and rules are evolving. You know, what we're doing is just all selfie style, you know, it's people on their cell phones filming themselves. So that's like a huge change to me. I'm old school with my film technology. I'm like, there's rules, there's ways we do this. And it's really changing. And so now I have to fit their multimedia way of doing it. You know, most kids these days are really great with that. And so they'll be involved in films and, you know, it's like these vloggers, they identify as vloggers, not filmmakers, but you are a filmmaker, you know, it's like you're making films, you're choosing your angles, you're doing all this. And there's almost like a little bit of, you know, there was disagreement with that. And now we're melding it into one, I'm seeing. So it's like it used to be if you were on stage, you'd have to be in film as well. Like in college, I produced a film we had, sorry. Oh, we mixed the two medias together. So we had film and theater together. We did a multimedia production where we had a film on the stage as well. So that's how we were mixing the two generations at that time. But now, after COVID, we have to adjust again and figure out how to fit the new technology. And, you know, children are the future and what they're doing is going to be huge. And we're trying to keep up, you know, with the technology and film and what we're seeing, our ways of filming, the programs, the apps. I mean, everything is there for you and they can just do it. Anyone can be involved. So it is a big change. That has been a big impact. And that's affecting how deaf people do it too, because of vlogs and things. One difference with sign language is depending on which way you want to turn the camera. A lot of people go vertical now. So you've got to sign real small. And I'm like, turn your phone horizontal. But I'm not sure, if the world's going to accept going vertical with the phone or horizontal or not. There's all these different layers to consider. What do you guys want to add? Nikki says, yeah, after COVID, I mean, that's when I left the theater company. So I was focusing on my blog. And, I kind of started, I mean, again, like I ended up becoming best friends with YouTube, my web series and filming myself and the web content. And so, um, yeah, I mean, and then looking at my daughter, it was YouTube for her. She wasn't thinking about movies or Netflix or Hulu or Disney Plus. She loves YouTube. And I'm like, watch a movie. And she'd rather just look at something on YouTube. It's really interesting. And she's 9 years old. But so, she told me that she wanted to be a content creator as well. And it's like, let's wait till you're a little older. I didn't want her to do that. But so we do work together. And so that's when I started a CODA girl named Ember. And so this year is season 3, but we're on hold right now because she wants to advance. We want to like do some fundraising so we can advance our budget to be able to invest more in her show. So like, the first season we were just learning. Second year was like, okay, we were starting to get a little bit of income from it, just little bits. And by year 3, I felt like it's kind of coming up more, like we deserve it. We should get more, and be at that level. So I am still learning though. And I'm very thankful to, COVID in that way because it just completely shifted everything with our age. It's like we're looking at the new generation and it's like, wow, we need to do things your way. And so we're learning from their generation, we're learning their way. And, we try to like work together with the younger generation and, combining our knowledge with the new generation's way. It's really a collaboration. And like you say, it's a blending, Ruthie. Yeah. So
Did Joette have anything to add?
Yes, I did have something, but then I just lost it. While I was watching Nikki, I was like, oh, I want to mention this. And then it'll come up later when I think of it. I'll let you know.
Okay, thank you.
Ruthie says, I would add something though. Captioning too is a big consideration. I mean, that's really impacted the deaf community, deaf filmmakers. I mean, we hate the responsibility of adding captions. Like for hearing access, they hadn't thought about adding captions. And then all of a sudden, it's like, they put this content out here and deaf people don't have access to it. So we have to reach out to get captions. And now it's our turn and we have to add captions when we're filming in sign language. We have to think about who we're impacting and we have to pay someone to do the captioning. We have to pay someone to be listening to the audio to add the caption. So, it's a big consideration. It's even more for like deaf blind people. You're going to need a whole transcript. So you have to add these things in as well. That's another change.
Oh, I finally remembered what I was going to add. That women, there's someone named Rita Corey. She's an actress. She's been an actress since the 1970s. She's been involved in many films, and I was at the National Theater for the Deaf. I was involved in a production there, and she was my teacher. And so I've heard a lot about her. I mean, people have said that she knows how to handle the stage. She can get right down to the cues, the scripts, the tools. Like she knows what she's doing. And then for many years, I'm one of the committees. There's 5 of us. And the other 4 have had experiences with her as well. And then I was a teacher aide with her for 13 years. And so I saw her go through it all. And one of the biggest problems that I noticed was funding. I think we worked for 5 years and then they said, where's the money? How do we start to edit? How do we hire people? How do we do all that? We kept hitting these roadblocks and because it was a money issue. And it seems that hearing people are quite resistant towards giving money and helping funding film for people who are deaf. And that was a huge struggle for us. One person that was in the committee, she lived in LA and she tried her best to kind of pull people in and get the money and fundraise, and she would type proposals and send them off. And so that is one of the biggest problems, is funding.
In addition to that, that's a very important and I think very eye-opening for me anyway, hearing all of this. What else do you wish hearing production teams, cast and crew knew in addition to these funding difficulties and, accessibility, the accessibility that Ruthie had touched upon and how that also falls to you? What additional things do you wish that hearing production, cast and crew knew?
I mean, first of all, really, we have to thank Troy Coates,er a huge name. He is who really opened all of the doors for us
Yes.
as actors, for producers, crew, everyone. So, I mean, for me, seeing him, it's like I saw so many doors open. And some things, like I could propose an idea, it's going to be turned down. And it just feels like I have to almost go in their footsteps, follow in their footsteps, with how I do things. It's like I want to do my ideas, my passion. Like I'm sure both of these ladies have passions too. And then yes, I guess I just really do want to add that I'm so grateful to the community at large. The ASL community, it doesn't matter if you're deaf or hearing, just being involved in the American Sign Language community. Right now I'm doing this Fab Over 40. It's a national contest supporting breast cancer. And I've had a very close call with cancer before. I ended up being negative, so that was a huge relief, but I really wanted to support the organization. But at the same time, they're asking me what I'm going to do with this $40,000 if I win. So, and I would like to use that to build a bridge between the communities, hearing and deaf communities in the arts, with theater and film. So it's like, if I get this 40,000, I can build that. And I hope that Troy's journey and, me winning this Fab Over 40 could lead to more things being set up, to more charity, to having this funding and to be able to support everyone and lift everyone up more, just for more equity, equal access with everyone, not just deaf either. It's for hearing people who are involved so that they can see, what deaf culture is doing and that we are different. And, hopefully to level the playing field and to really collaborate. So, that's just, yeah. Ruthie says, that's beautiful. Yeah.
I agree. And also, someone who might play someone who's blind or deaf, I prefer the authentic casting in that role. And, you might hire someone and then they can kind of hire someone who is visually impaired or deaf, and they can have that authenticness. And back when we had black and white TV, someone would paint their face black and pretend, and then why wouldn't you just hire someone that had that authenticness, that blackness, that could bring that cultural competency to the role? And why are you hiring someone who can't sign and then does sign that isn't really authentic or that kind of thing? You need to hire someone who's deaf who can bring that authentic sign and language to the role. We are getting better, but we still have a lot of ways to go that can improve that.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely support those comments. Troy Coates,er did open some doors. He is a real deaf person. ASL is his natural language, and it's like, yes, we're finally getting that. But also behind the scenes, for example, things we want to know is we want to be sensitive with people who are deaf, that we can have deaf producers, writers, and have them there with these actors. For example, with Coda, that film was great. It was an absolutely wonderful movie, a huge success. But who wrote it? A hearing person, right? And then And who directed it? A hearing person who had just learned sign language and like fallen in love with it. So they decided to write this script and produce this movie. So they're like learning and at the same time going back and forth, and it took off. It got huge. But it's like, it's wonderful what it did, but at the same time, there are some things that could be looked at as like mistakes or sort of the kind of misinformation. Like there were a few little errors talking about the 70s and these kind of things. And it's like, no, that's not what grassroots deaf people would do. You can see these little inauthenticities. And so I just wish they kind of knew before going ahead, like if they had brought in a deaf writer, if they had brought in a deaf director to work together, like Nikki was saying, collaboration. They could have had teams doing this, working together, and then it would have been an authentic representation of culture, and Hollywood in general. You can look at these films, typically they'll add like the word silent or silent bridge or these kind of things to the title, and or like sounds of whatever. They add these little terms that really focus on the ears, and it's like, but we want sign culture, we want to see it for real. And then with a hearing film, they tend to just focus on the face. We're not seeing the hands and arms. They're focused on these things. So when we're editing, that's all we have to pick from. But for signed parts, we want quiet moments. We want to see the hands go down. We want to include that when we're editing. And so that's where if you had someone like to be able to consult about this, they could have filmed it that way in the beginning. So we have those clips to choose from. So we can see someone's sign language and we can see the real culture, because for deaf people, there's so much involved. There's deaf culture. There's people who are hard of hearing, people with hearing loss. There's a huge variety and diversity even within it. There's a term autism and linguicism, if you interpret there, and ableism. These are all different forms of oppression that we experience, against deafblind people, against children, little people who are deaf. There's different identities within the group. And so we can reach out to these people and give them opportunities as well.
I love that you've touched upon so many things that are near and dear to my own heart. So thank you. I'm a little bit choked up. Speaking a little bit to deaf, hard of hearing representation on camera, it's a start, clearly, but it's just a start and it's not enough. You've touched upon the need for representation behind the camera, intersectionality, which Ruthie just talked about. When you walk into a project, ideally, or if you're approached about a project, what do you want to see? What makes a project comfortable or a big yes for you, given all of these different factors and ways in which the hearing community needs to improve, including the deaf and hard of hearing community in their projects?
Well, I mean, I look to Ember, my daughter. I'm really thankful to her because it's like, at 9 years old, she makes me feel like, yes, I'm going to do this. I can write a script. And I look at her, she's a coda. I mean, just like the movie Coda, right? And I just feel, in my point of view, my opinion, I think it's a great idea to work with both hearing and deaf people to bring them together. I think that's going to make success. And, from my understanding in the past, with my theater company on stage, I was always focusing on a deaf group and I was hitting a glass ceiling. I just couldn't break through. And now when I opened it up to hearing people, that's when we really took off. So, yeah. And Ruth says, that's true. It's hard. Yeah. Yep. And especially, locally. I mean, if you're in New York City or Hollywood, maybe you're going to have a different path. But here it is so hard. The deaf community does have limits.
It's more like hiking, nature. That's kind of what Colorado is known for, not theater. There a few people ask me, do you live in Colorado? How do you do theater? You need to go out west or go out east. You need to go to New York. You need to go to California. But I want to empower the children here. I want to really raise the theater lens here.
Yeah, coming here and like Nikki said, setting up a theater company, I saw it kind of having success and the community enjoyed it. But yeah, there were definitely limits to the success. And it's like once you collaborate, then you can really grow. And like she says, we're not going to give up and just go follow the dream somewhere else. We want to do it for the deaf community here and hearing and hard of hearing community too, because they are hungry for that culture, for sign language. And so we are trying to start new things like the Rocky Mountain Deaf Film Festival, where people can see sign language on film and see deaf culture and get a taste of the community and the different perspectives. And in March, on November 8th, 9th, and 10th, we were going to have the film festival, but it got postponed to March. I'm actually kind of grateful to the snowstorm because now it's postponed to March 28th, 29th, and 30th. So, I mean, that is open to everyone. Come and check out the film festival and get the deaf experience, see a deaf film festival, and see the world through the deaf lens, and there will be captions. You'll have access. It's going to be right there. So I really want to encourage the community to come and to work together so we can grow it here locally. I really hope to have more film opportunities around here. Yeah.
Ruthie, sign WIFMCO up because we would love to partner with you, by the way.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I look forward to that. I definitely want to work together from here on out. Yeah. Right. Film productions and projects in the future, all three of us can be involved. Absolutely.
Now, do you, as people who belong to underrepresented and marginalized groups, do you find that you have to fight and work much harder to have access and opportunities? For example, when a casting call says they are open to all people, are they though?
Yeah, you're talking about auditions. Yes. So people do want to sign up for auditions, and there's usually a line for that. But yeah, sometimes they say, sorry, we can't accommodate you. And then and you're not a fit for the role. When I lived in Maryland, I directed for the stage, not film, but I was a director for the stage for 13 years. And many kids auditioned, and they would just be heartbroken when they didn't get the spot. And so they said, oh, you can do hair and makeup, you can do crew, you can do that. I am a licensed cosmetologist. And so I empowered them to think beyond just that role, because later they could have another opportunity. Don't give up. I try to empower them. And that's what Ruthie's doing in film here, empowering the community. So that's what I did in Maryland, and that's what Ruthie's doing here.
And I would add to that with a specific role, you might see, yes, this is open to anyone, but you want to check who the producer is, what the background is, what's happening with the story, because sometimes they'll let a deaf person audition, but they want you to be able to hear and speak because that's easier access. They don't want to have to bring in a sign language interpreter. So sometimes that will happen, or it looks like a role is going to be a good fit. They want someone who's a signer. So I'm like, okay, yeah, I want to do that. I love acting. I am an actress, absolutely. And I love filming and being creative, but it's like I hit the wall because I have to invest in the audition. Even I have one experience I will never forget. I flew out to JFK for a performance for a production, and it looked like it was going to be really good. It was a little girl in a mainstream environment. It didn't say she talked, so I went out and signed, and they said, okay, sure, would you mind just speaking? And I thought, wait, me voicing? And it really stopped me cold. I mean, I don't speak. I cannot speak. I don't hear. And they said, well, please go ahead and speak. And I thought, whoa, for this audition, I was going to be playing a role, but at the same time, with my values, my core values are called into question because I am a signer. That's who I am. So you want me to try and talk like this fake thing that I don't do? So I tried to speak, and the director and writer laughed at me. They really did. They made fun of my voicing, and I realized I had made a huge mistake in that moment. And I took this huge risk with acting, and I thought this character would fit who I am, and I could trust in this process. And I was, not a fit. I was not hired, and I just walked off and left. And people were laughing at me and making fun of me as a deaf person for this role who wanted to be. I came all the way out to JFK for this, and then I applied, and so now it's like I will look at who's involved. If there's deaf people involved, then I know I can sign, and that'll be part of it. So sometimes you have to check into it.
I am so sorry that was your experience. That's horrifying. Um,
Yeah.
Now, kind of tying a little bit into the, representation and, being marginalized or having difficult access, things not being accessible to you, for example, not having interpreters or um, anything like that. I myself belong to multiple marginalized groups. And for me, it's a mixed bag having roles that are specifically calling for any one of my identities, both good and bad. How do you feel about it? Speaking, for example, to the movie Coda, you were represented on screen, but you weren't represented behind the camera. So, how seeing those kinds of things occur, how does that feel? And I realize it can vary from production to production, but I'm curious, you know, so we understand the impact of what we're doing as hearing filmmakers.
Yes, I was so excited when the Coda movie came out. I felt like it opened the doors. Finally, we have representation on screen. And then I learned what happened behind the screen, and that the hearing community is the script, the producers, that kind of thing. So I was kind of disappointed. I mean, it's not Troy's fault. I'm not trying to blame anyone. He's still doing his career, navigating what he needs to, but I still felt like I had a knot in my stomach. You know, we can't give up. We need to change the future. We need to improve access for the deaf community.
And I have a different point of view. When I saw Coda, I was happy. I was thrilled because of my daughter. And honestly, a hearing director doesn't matter to me. What I think is important is that we're working together with deaf actors, ASL consultants. I really applaud Marley Matlin. She's blunt. She has hold on one second. Marley Matlin told the director that she wanted an authentic deaf actor involved in Coda in the movie, another authentic deaf actor. So that was really an important first step. And I understand that the deaf community is disappointed. They want, all the deaf people behind the scenes as well, but we'll get there. We just have to be patient, I'm starting to get a little bit tired. I mean, of it, but after the Oscar, I mean, once he won the Oscar, that was proof. We saw the seeds were planted and they're starting to grow. And that's exciting. It's a good step. We're making progress. So I don't want to see too much negativity. I want to focus on the good and go from there. Like with where I am right now, I'm in a movie. It's not finished yet, but I'm really excited, to have that experience and to get to go through that. And I am seeing doors open. So that's really a start. It's like the sun is starting to rise. I feel like, if you look at the 70s and 80s, it was like we were still in the dark, but now it's like the sun is rising and the future is bright. So we're getting there. We are, I don't know. That's just my opinion. I really do love the Coda movie and I don't care about like all the behind the scenes stuff. I think it's a good start. I really do. I think it's a good step in the right direction. So I applaud it.
I think from her experience, and I am kind of older than both of these two panelists, but what I've seen, what I've been through, I do understand their perspectives and Nikki's perspectives, especially. Yes, I'm excited about, the collaboration, but I still think we have room to improve. And I hope it happens sooner than later. I mean, I want to be involved in that improvement, and I hope that we see it soon. So, like Nikki mentioned about Marley Matlin, I mean, people used to say she didn't sign clear. She kind of catered to the hearing community. And so many deaf people since then have been involved, and she's really opened doors. It has taken quite a long time, like 20 years? But I'm happy that they're on the road and we're seeing that representation and successfulness on screen.
Yeah. And, it's nice to see some hearing awareness. Like if a deaf person proposed an idea, I think, it'd be nice if they were open-minded to that, to having a different approach culturally, to use sign language, right? Like it's not writing is not our first language in the first place, but they force us basically. What I'd like to do is sign and create something in ASL. So like an ASL vlog, if you do that, most people do a script for a vlog and then sign it. But wouldn't it be nice if you could do it the other way around, sign something, translate it, and then make that the proposal? Because right now it's like a barrier that we can't just sign. So it's like we hit a wall and we're trying to figure out what we can do. Let's say we get the budget. If we could sign a script and then have it translated and produced, that'd be wonderful. That'd be something different. And I wonder if it just seems like no one's ready for that approach. Like Nikki says, it's kind of slow going. We're seeing change, but it's like, changing a whole system is going to be slow. And our community has to kind of make waves. We have to push this along. Yeah.
That's what I wanted to say. Yes, we need the responsibility, shake things up, let's
Yeah, right.
we have to push people along. We have to, of course, I love the hearing community. My whole family is hearing and I want to collaborate. Yes, but we still need to make waves. We still need to push it along.
I'm going to pivot a little bit. I was wondering, what kinds of tips would you have to give a deaf or hard of hearing person new to the filmmaking world to help them navigate their path forward, given the challenges already inherent in entering as a filmmaker, but the additional challenges of someone who is deaf or hard of hearing that you wish someone had told you?
Okay. I have something. I mean, like I say, I'm new still, but so my tips for the younger people would be to be patient with hearing people, work with them. When I do an audition, a film audition, I would add a tip to add captions to your audition, if you're doing a filmed audition, instead of having someone come in like an actual interpreter, try to do it yourself and then add your own captions for what you're saying. And it's really important, like, again, with my recent experience with my vlog, my sign vlog on YouTube, some hearing person added a comment saying, like, why is your background so noisy? And I was like, oh, I didn't know it was. I didn't know I don't hear, so or like, why is there so much background noise? So yeah, my husband is hearing and he knows sign language. And so he, like if I make an audition, I give it to my husband and I have him make sure there's no like sounds in the background, nothing bothersome. So he can check that for me. And there's like levels you can do. You can turn the audio down. So then we'll turn that audio down. That way we can focus on the sign language and the captions. And there was another thing, another tip I would offer just for me, with my ASL vlog. It's something interesting is that when hearing people watch ASL, they can't rest. They need sound. It's like it's not easy for them. So my husband suggested adding like some music or something to put them at ease. And it really helped. Adding the music really got more people watching because of having sound on it with the captions as well. So I was like, okay. So that's my tip too for young people, is just to make sure you do have a balance. You're doing it for both hearing and deaf people. It doesn't mean like you have to just like focus only on deaf, it's not like deaf all the way. It's like, let's open it up so we're getting both world viewpoints. And, that's how you're going to have success and take off, I'd say. So.
Yes, but of course, hearing people, they might want you to work together. Yes, but deaf have the right to add tips and add, give feedback to change things, to make it a collaborative effort. It isn't a one-way street. So they should be able to add things and respect each other, respect my culture, that what I bring to the table. And deaf people have their culture and they love and adore their culture. So allow us to bring that. And if you can, that collaboration will just take off and work wonderfully.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. And then a tip I would offer is be confident. So often deaf people are like, well, I don't know, it's a hearing world. They know better. Whatever. I'm just deaf. I can't do it. But don't. be confident, do your best, and do your research, see who is behind the production, check and see if you're going to have actual access and reach out, see if it's a friendly environment, network, get there, and then go forth from there. Because in my own experience, if I only reached out to deaf people, I wouldn't get anywhere. But reaching out to hearing people, I could find people who are eager to learn. I could advocate and give them tips, and then we could really grow it that way. So, and that's like another way around to get back to the deaf community, because otherwise people are resistant to our productions and we're getting nothing but no's. But if you like meet the right network, that starts to open doors, and then you find people who will be advocates and who will get the deaf community involved. And so, I don't blame deaf people. They've had struggles, they've had oppression, but do be confident and just go for it, try it.
Yep, exactly. That's right on. Spot on.
We're going to pivot again a little bit, speaking to RMDFF, the Rocky Mountain Deaf Film Festival, and film festivals in general. But if you would first, Ruthie and also Joette, talk about the Rocky Mountain Deaf Film Festival. What is it? How has it started? Its genesis? How is it evolving? And your long-term goals for Rocky Mountain Deaf Film Festival.
So I was involved with a lot of deaf films in the past, a lot of deaf film festivals. With I was involved with the Rochester, New York Deaf Film Festival and the Maine Deaf Film Festival. And so I was involved in a variety, and I would submit my films and see the deaf and hearing community come together to watch those films. And that was such an inspiration. People were creating their poetry, their art, and I would see it spread. I saw the message spreading. And so I was involved with that. But then I came here and, especially after COVID, I saw so many things online. I saw so many things, going viral and things I would catch. And, I just thought, what a way to heal the community if we can work together and share these vibes. And I was just trying to think how I could do that. I've seen deaf films like in Seattle, they've got a film festival, and there's all these all over the coast, but it's like, where is one for the middle of the country? And so, people love media and film. So I thought, why not kind of transition? And so I went ahead, just kind of spur of the moment, and created this Rocky Mountain Deaf Film Festival. And the logo is hands like from the old sign for movie, from a 16 millimeter, 18 millimeter film, those big wheels that turn. So that's the logo. And I made it like the mountains. So Rocky Mountain Deaf Film Festival. I just want it to spread like we're in the mountains. And, we have a junior film festival as well to encourage kids. So we have S Share, I Inspire, an acronym. And so then, sorry, back to that. E is for elevate. So we elevate. So it's SIE. And that's how we're impacting the children. So, because they love to film, they love to be creative. And so we can work together, And so I decided to set this up, and I was surprised because I got to collaborate with the Denver Metro Deaf Club, Association of the Deaf, Denver Metro Association of the Deaf got involved and gave a lot of money. And so, we have 31 films. It really grew. And then also we have Joette as an MC, and we have Rana Marie Ravino. And so we've got them emceeing, and that way it's kind of like a classic performance mixed in with the film. So we're going like classic and modern and kind of combining the two. And we had a great turnout, and the Deaf Club came. And so I do want to continue that. And my goal is to really grow it within the community so that everyone can enjoy watching these deaf film stories, and that there's going to be a message, that we're getting through the deaf lens. I hope that will spread. I hope hearing people will be involved and we can collaborate. Something I've always been really desperate for is, films in Denver, and I want to be involved. And I just feel like, I was hitting the ceiling, and so I want to be able to grow it and make sure we're working together with all these different films. You want to add anything?
I mean, you did a great job. That was perfect.
How can the hearing community support the Rocky Mountain Deaf Film Festival now and going forward? What can we do?
One thing oh, do you want to say something, Joy?
Like she was saying, investing in children and films and getting the word out. Really, we have to start doing something. And so we've worked hard to do this. And so now we are here and we are trying to get the next steps and get the hearing community involved. And this is a great start.
Yeah, and we would absolutely love to collaborate and have you all involved and have community support, have donations, have, captioning involvement, be able to pay for interpreters for access. We need donations for website, PR, marketing, all of that to be able to reach out and to grow this for the future. And I mean, this can lead to future productions and collaborations with filmmaking. So I would love to see more people involved, like we can combine technologies and just work together, exchange stuff for the future. Yeah.
I hope everyone watching now and later takes note. So I'm going to pivot again to talking about interpreters. You touched upon, interpreters, and there are a lot of questions that people have surrounding interpreters. People see ASL and they think, oh, I can do that. But the truth is, especially as they look at the film industry, it's very different. It's not just because you can, the alphabet, you can interpret. So what are some things you wish people knew, either who want to get into interpreting as someone in the deaf community, or you wish that they knew as interpreters who want to get into specifically film related interpreting?
I mean, all my interpreters in the film have done a good job. I can't complain.
Yes, that's true. I agree.
Yeah, I would just, I think one thing that's really important is that interpreters are qualified sign language interpreters, that expressive and receptive, because, if you're just learning sign language, that's going to impact the film production. There's going to be a lot of frustrations, like the director's trying to get moving, but they're trying to sign what the director's saying. And someone might be like, well, say that again. I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what you're saying. So that's going to make it take a lot longer. And, films are expensive. They're paying for all this. They're paying for their time. And so you need to make sure it's going to be smooth communication. If you have a deaf actor who's having a problem with the interpreter, they might end up being like, just get out of here. And like the deaf actor loses their job, but it's like, well, you have a signer here. It's not real access. So you need to make sure that everyone on both ends of the production knows that you need a qualified interpreter. Everyone who's involved in the film needs to know the boundaries too. Sometimes interpreters could be looking to take advantage and try to have the spotlight on them and trying to make it about them, but they are really supposed to be behind the scenes, just signing. They're there for communication facilitation. So they're there for both the hearing and the deaf side, and they're giving communication access. So
Exactly. I remember, what was it, like 1980s, 1990s? I had an interpreter on the stage. So I was here and the interpreter was behind them and was speaking for them. And they were like a shadow interpreter. They were all black. And that doesn't happen anymore. Now some interpreters are actors as well. So they are right there on the scene. Before they were all black and you couldn't see them, but now they're right there in the picture. And it actually makes for a wonderful, smooth process. And sometimes when there's an audience, there can be two interpreters that take turns because there's two characters, and that's amazing. So there'll be two interpreters that are interpreting, and one will have one character, one will have the other, and they'll just go back and forth. I remember that when they did the shadow interpreting, the person was all in black. It really didn't flow very well. So what is it? It's called shadow interpreting. That's right. Yes. So now the interpreter can be involved right there and just make it as fluid and as beautiful as needed.
oh yeah, nowadays is different. After COVID, I got hired to play a supporting role, a character for The Music Man in Maryland. It was with the Only Theater. Only Theater, I think. Yep. And at the Only Theater Center. And I just loved the way they integrated the layers, how they coordinated it for the audience. So for the audience, they could be hearing or deaf, because we had two deaf characters signing. Now in the past, you'd have like a voice interpreter, but they didn't even do it. They just had like in captions up on screen, so you could just look up to see what they were signing. when it was hearing to hearing people talking, they didn't have an interpreter either. They didn't have a shadow interpreter following around. They had captions on screen. And so for deaf and hearing people, we just used our regular communication, signing or speaking and signing at the same time. And then they had the caption. So it was like 3 in 1. And it was such a huge improvement. When I saw that, I thought, okay, this has to come here. We have to bring this to Colorado. And I am working on that now for a new production next year. So, I mean, yeah, basically, we learn something. And at the same time, for film, something that's really cool is to have deaf to deaf people. You could have like yellow captions showing that it's deaf language. And then hearing to hearing, when they're talking, you do white captions. So you color code the captions. I have this new sign for captions that I learned from like the film signs that they were doing when I was there. So yeah, I mean, basically both hearing and deaf people are just, doing their thing, but you have this 3 in 1 with the color coded captioning. And I just learned about that 3 years ago. So, I mean, that was on stage and it applies to movies. So it's amazing. It's such an improvement. Yeah. Like shadow interpreting, I see less and less of that. And now it's like, you don't even need that. I want hearing and deaf audience members to be able to just all relax and enjoy the show. But at the same time, in the movie theater, it's really limited. It still is. Like if deaf people go to see a movie, they still have to set a date, or they have a set date. And so I just really wish that um, if I could call the movie theater, I could say, hey, I want to see a movie that same day, and they could just set it up and put captions on the screen. I don't know why they only have a set date and expect us to go by that date with their availability. I mean, you know, at the Denver Center for Performing Arts, it's really limited right now. Like if I have a conflict, it's like, oh shoot, I want to see this play. Do you have a different date? And I can't. So I have to miss the play. So I wish I could see more movie theaters and, of course, stage, just being a little bit more flexible. I'd like to see that. Like that'd be actual equal access to hearing, because hearing people can go whenever they want. And deaf people have to be like, okay, this is in my calendar. This is when I'm gonna see it. I know when they have an accessible performance. So it's limited. This is yeah. And can I add one really important thing, like a really hot topic, a lot of controversy right now. There's ads about hiring deaf actors, so they have an audition. And there was a black deaf guy who auditioned for the father, and he was signing with the mother over a baby. And in the audition, this black deaf actor was invited, and there was a black male interpreter, dancer, actor, who's a coda, or a Goda rather. His grandparents are deaf, and so he's a great signer. And he came in and was interpreting for this deaf actor who was auditioning. And when they got done, somehow the director approached the interpreter or something. I mean, it's not totally clear what happened, but somehow the interpreter got hired and ended up being on the TV show for that role. So the deaf black actor did not get the role. So that is like a huge issue between the deaf and hearing community. I mean, just a big controversy, because it's like this guy took over the role. And that's a great example of like an interpreter coming in to give access and then reaping the benefit. The director ended up bringing that interpreter in instead of the person who was auditioning. So, that's where you have to set boundaries. The interpreter should have said, no, I'm here, representing this actor, giving communication access. It should go to them. And so, a lot of people are really unhappy with how that went. There's just a lot of turmoil around that, because it's like this guy lost the opportunity. The black deaf actor was working hard. He studied his lines, and then the interpreter comes in, takes the role because he can hear and talk. And, so you really have to be careful in that kind of situation. And I do understand, like the interpreter's got to think about money. There's an issue, the interpreter's paid to do their job, but I mean, I do understand why the director is having to think about budgeting as well, because it's like, okay, if I hire this deaf guy, just to remind you guys, how much you spend on interpreters, it is a tax write-off. You do get back from that. So, I would like hearing directors to know that they don't realize they can get money back after they've spent on interpreters. you know, because it's a tax write-off. So paying for interpreters, you can get something back from that still. So, but they don't realize that. So yeah, that, you know, I would just, that's a tip I would give.
I mean, I remember you talking about that happened, I think last year, that hot topic you were talking about. It really depends on the attitude too with the interpreter. Some interpreters are like, oh, I have spotlight, and they take over and they don't really realize. So they have to be sensitive of that. I mean, they're auditioning for the role. It isn't about me. I'm just the interpreter. I'm here to give access, but some people do take advantage of that because an interpreter can talk and sign, and the producer might not know. And so it really depends on the interpreter's attitude going into the situation.
I'm curious. I didn't prepare this question ahead of time, so my apologies. But I'm wondering, can you right off the bat, when you're working with a new interpreter, kind of tell where they're coming from as far as whether they want the spotlight or if they are there to be a conduit for communication? Purely that.
We have wonderful interpreters here in Colorado. I mean, we are so lucky. They are great with boundaries. I mean, they're quite professional. So I don't know about others, but here in Colorado, these two are great models. They can model for everyone.
And I would say, you know, it's really important that the interpreters have their ethics, right? So their training, they should know, basically. That's all I can say.
Really, when Nikki mentioned ethics, sometimes when you become an interpreter, you have to take a test. And really, there's a lot that goes into that test. You have to understand the nuances. It isn't just a teacher, you know, it isn't the interpreter's fault either. It's important that they follow the steps, that they know the ethics, that they have to pass all of these layers to become a qualified interpreter.
And for example, let's say an interpreter knows the film industry, and so they're interpreting for a deaf actor. You know, while the filming is going on, the interpreter might realize like there was an error in lighting. They might see like this person is way overlit, it's washing them out, or you know, there's like crazy patterns, you can't see their signs. Like the deaf person might not want to say anything. They're like, I'm just playing this role, and so I have to do what I need to do, but the interpreter might take over and want to explain to the director, like, you can't do this kind of lighting, you can't have these clothes on them. And the deaf person is not signing this. That's the interpreter taking over. That's an example of overreach by the interpreter. That is crossing a boundary, trying to tell trying to tell the director something that's not in the interpreter's role to tell them. You know, if the deaf person wanted to speak up and say, you know, this pattern and this lighting is not going to work, my signs aren't going to be visible, then that's when the interpreter can voice that. But the interpreter is supposed to be neutral and is supposed to be there for communication. So they shouldn't be injecting themselves into it like that. You know, unless they're specifically asked, and then they can pass that question on to the deaf person and say, why don't we ask them? You know, and if someone tries to ask the interpreter a question and the interpreter just goes off and explains it rather than handing it to the deaf person, then that's a problem too. That's where the interpreter is like preaching, definitely crossing a boundary and taking over when they shouldn't be. So you want to be like, well, you know, you want to watch what the deaf person's signing and voice that, and you want to just kind of maintain the pace and have use good judgment in those situations. And I would also add that, you know, there's like a new job position, ASL consultant. So that's where you bring in someone to support the director and the producer, and someone who knows what to do with the deaf actors. And you know, they can work together with the interpreter, and so I can see some improvements happening with that just with my recent experience. I don't know how it was before. You know, like I'm kind of in the dark about what happened in the past since I'm new, but we had 3 ASL consultants all around the set, just ready to go when I was filming. So I mean, yeah, it's really important that the producer or whoever wants to hire deaf actors brings in an ASL consultant. Ruthie says, yes, so important. Yes.
Is it better for the production to provide interpreters, or is it better if you have your own dedicated or preferred interpreters to come with you to set when offered the opportunity to have it provided by production?
Oh, I have some. I did see Marley Matlin as an example. She has the same dedicated interpreter. We see him, and I like that idea. I really, I have like one or two in mind, kind of interpreters who can interpret for me.
Yeah, it's called a personal interpreter. I prefer to have a personal interpreter.
Yeah, and I prefer to have that. Yeah, a dedicated one. So, I mean, I'm not there yet, but like, I guess we'll see once. Fingers crossed anyway for the future. I do have options, so yeah. And then often it's not easy to find a personal interpreter who can do that because they have their own lives, their business, their schedule, and who's paying for this, dedicated interpreter. So it's nice to, know if you have an interpreter who you enjoy working with and they enjoy working with you, then you could ask if you could work together for future film productions, and then the film production could pay for it and invest in that. That'd be nice.
Now, I was wondering, I had some, this is an opportunity for the audience to ask their questions. So, Katrina in the booth will field questions from the people who are online and send those to me. The people who are in the room, if you have questions, you can ask them, and then we will repeat it for the people who are watching now and later, and then they can accordingly ask. Does that work? Yeah. All right.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
good.
So,
Sure.
audience members here, while Katrina is sending me the questions, do you have any questions that that have come up over the course of our conversation so far, or anything? I'll try and reiterate what Zach said. So the question was, with the evolution of different modes of technology like TikTok and YouTube, um, the question is about has that improved accessibility, and what do producers need to be aware of in terms of challenges that might present to the deaf and hard of hearing community? Did I, okay.
Captioning. Captioning. YouTube has some odd auto captioning that comes on, but I can definitely see some errors in the words. It's like, wait, what? That is not what they said. So I already know, because I can read lips some. So it's like, and it's cool. Hearing people are kind of lucky because they can just talk and push a button, and then it can just do like this automatic English captioning for them. But for deaf people, no, we sign, and then we have to go to the next step of typing out. We have to look at what we say, time it out, add the captions for hearing people to understand what we're signing. So I wish that the technology could identify our signs and then give us auto captioning for hearing people. I wish it could. That'd be cool. I'm not sure how that could work. Maybe in the future there'll be better technology, but who knows? AI, Ruthie says artificial intelligence. Yep, something like that. Something. Yeah. So fingers crossed. But yeah, I mean, we'll see.
Also, deaf people prefer captioning too. I know that there's sign language there, but sometimes their signs might be regional and someone doesn't know. And so they'll look at the captioning and be like, oh, that's what that was. So that's a benefit for both.
And it's funny, I watch movies and TV shows and YouTube and stuff, and it's I still read the captions even when it's in sign language. It's just habit. Yep. Ruthie says sometimes I do. Sometimes, yeah. And then
You might miss the story though, because you're going back and forth between the captioning and the signing.
But yeah, to add to that answer, yeah, I mean, there are changes. There's some definite pros with technology. Adding the captioning is really cool. And that's right, like the auto captioning errors. If it's simple and basic closed captions, you'll have like blips or something. You can see this, you're still missing the tone. But nowadays, they actually can do the captioning in place by who's speaking. And that's really cool. And it comes up when they're speaking, it shows more emotion. They're like adding stuff to the words. So I feel a lot more connected with that, with the diversity of people in captioning that we see. And it's really fascinating having stuff coming up to the sides of their faces and stuff. So it's not just always at the bottom of the screen. In the future, it'd be cool if you sign something mad, if it could like come up in red, and like that means they are mad when they're signing that word, because it would reflect the tones that you would normally hear in the voice, but that you see in sign language. So that's a pro. Now, some cons are the workload. I mean, with hearing people, it's like, can you please add captions? You have to reach out, and stuff's getting there. But yeah.
Great question. Any other questions from the audience here? Yes, Kate. So Kate was asking about for ASL students and people who want to get in work, develop a working vocabulary surrounding filmmaking. What are some good resources? Because what's currently available and findable on Google, I guess, is primarily for people who work in movie theaters and a movie going audience, as opposed to necessarily on set.
I mean, there's not really much as far as the film industry for acting, sign language. There's not a ton for how you could learn that. It's more like general ASL. There's apps, there's Ingva app, there's these kind of things, and you'd have to just then find, like, if you could find a film section and find vocabulary. But I mean, I don't know if there's like a particular director you could reach out to. Hopefully in the future they'll produce something like that, and then we'll have more access to industry terms for the signs. Yeah. And I would strongly suggest finding a deaf teacher of ASL. Sometimes, just a native user. That's so important. I have seen a few TikToks. TikTok, I don't know what's the sign now people do. Yep. I just like drop one hand out like that. Okay. All right. That's new for me. TikTok, I guess. I'm 50 years old, so I don't know. I'm still doing the 1990s things, but TikTok. So I've seen so many hearing people teaching errors and how they sign, and it's just, it's, I mean, it's so important that, the people who are learning ASL check the background, look at the person's background, who they are. Are they deaf? Are they a coda? Kind of what's behind that teacher. But I mean, I appreciate hearing people teaching it. I do, but I just want hearing people to learn straight from a deaf native because it's their first language, or from a coda because that would have been their first language too, a child of hearing, a child of deaf adults. And like thinking about Spanish, I'm a white person. Am I going to learn Spanish and then start teaching it? I'm not from Mexico, so I'm not going to do that. I would rather that people from Mexico teach their language, because it's their native language. So it's just the same thing with deaf people, or codas too, because they have both languages internalized. But I mean, really, a deaf person should be who you learn from. So yeah, I don't know. That's my opinion. I'd throw that out there. Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's beautiful. And I would also add that, on YouTube and social media, it's out of control hearing people learn a sign and then want to teach it and start signing. And, and there's some sign for video that people are teaching that's just totally wrong. It's like, there's different signs. And so stuff's, people sometimes are spreading the wrong sign. And then we have to put everything on hold and like correct these errors that are spreading.
I think the teaching interpreters are from mainstream. And so that's where they're learning it from. And video, this sign, they're trying to learn that. And they think it's C too, signing exact English. They'll use initialized sign. And that's really influenced we need to go back to ASL. Did you notice that?
True, yeah.
Yes. And then we also have to work on that too, and interpreters, and making sure they can be criticized on their work and when they make an error, plus seeing it in social media, plus on film, all of that. So we need to make sure that the future is accessible. We have a long way to go though. Am I right?
You know, I'd prefer to bring in a deaf teacher, and that's the way it works. You know, it makes everything successful if you socialize with deaf people and sign with deaf people. That's what I recommend.
It reinforces to me the point you made earlier about needing people behind the camera who belong to deaf culture and have that representation, because so much gets missed and lost. So thank you so much for that. Any last questions from the audience? No? No? All right. Well, I want to thank you all for coming here and thank our interpreters for their wonderful work. Any last points that you wanted to share about filmmaking, being a part of the community, or, you know, when people enter the community, working with deaf or hard of hearing filmmakers? Is there any additional points that come to mind that you'd like to end with?
I have something. Please vote for me in FAB over 40, FAB over 40. It's, you know, nice to see a deaf woman on the front page. It would be nice to see a deaf woman on the front page. So, and then also, it's nice to have, it'd be nice to have that money to be able to support Ruthie and to support other deaf artists and hearing people too. I mean, uh, we have to work together. That is my goal. I don't want to, you know, just pocket the money. I want to, you know, give to different causes. I want to support charity. I want to pay it forward, you know. So I'd like to do that. Yeah. And I'd like to see more, you know, just like different women in the national landscape too. Um, I am in first place in my group right now for the final round out of 2,000 women. Yeah, from all over. So there's a variety of groups. And I mean, next Thursday night is the final. That's when it closes or wraps up to the quarter final. So Maya, you have my QR code, right? You can vote, please. And, you know, because I can help grow this deaf and hearing community for the arts. So, yeah, okay. Yay, fingers crossed.
I will be putting up the QR code at the end, and it is already shared on the WIFMCO social media. So we'll make sure to get that up there for you.
Really, I want to thank you for inviting me.
You know, and I just want to give everyone something to think about, that if you're going to have a deaf person in film, open your heart, open your mind, and see what you can contribute. I mean, deaf people can add to your set experience, and you'd be amazed at what growth you can find when you get the perspectives of different people, including deaf people. And, you know, I think of Helen Hunter, the actress who's been involved in Hollywood and uh, improv with Gary Austin in New York City. And, you know, deaf people are producing these things and having actors involved. And it's, you know, influencing hearing actors to improve their craft because they're learning the body language from deaf people. And so, you know, it's making them more confident in their movement, more confident in their body with their body language. And so adding that extra layer really helps them find success. So, you know, if you could open your heart and mind to involving deaf people, and like with Rocky Mountain Deaf Film Festival, I certainly hope you show up and contribute and support, and, you know, let's make films together. And if you host a film festival, consider adding interpreters, advertising that you have someone signing there. If deaf people see you have that, then they have the opportunity to come instead of having to reach out and request an interpreter. It's nice if you just automatically offer that service, that accessibility for collaboration.
The key. I agree. That's the key.
And captioning. Yes, do add captioning as well.
Speaking of captioning, one of the later iterations of lights, camera accessibility, we're going to be talking about universal design. Captioning is valuable to people who are even hearing. I don't know about anyone else in the room who is hearing, but I use captioning. So, because sometimes you don't catch what they're saying, or it's an accent, or it's a speed, or it's even a sound issue. So, captioning is valuable to anyone. So, absolutely,
Yep.
absolutely. And I'm just going to wrap up with a few last minute things. Again, I want to thank our panelists, Nikki, Joette, and Ruthie for coming and sharing all of this knowledge. I've learned so much and I've gained so much. So thank you. And I also want to thank our interpreters, without whom this would not be nearly as possible. And of course, Fort Collins Public Media for hosting us, as well as the Colorado Film Office for making this possible. Again, my name is Maya Jerem. I am the Northern Colorado Branch Chair of WIFMCO. That's Women in Film and Media Colorado. You can follow us on social media at WIFMCO on Instagram, or you can find us on Facebook. And again, please stay tuned. We're going to keep having more discussions and workshops and along the lines of lights, camera, accessibility. And we hope to work with the Rocky Mountain Deaf Film Festival in the future as well. So please do stay tuned, and thank you for joining us.
And can I add, I do want to thank you for reaching out to us. What an inspiration. This doesn't happen often, that someone just reaches out to you like that and makes something happen like that. So I am really eager and motivated. It's like, this is happening here in Colorado, it's going to lift the community up. And so it's something to look forward to. I was starting to feel kind of sad. It's like, oh, wow. And, it's like I see, and I miss working with these two. So, I really do want to work together. It's just like you've started a spark here. So thank you so much. I hope it grows from here.
And it's a huge honor that you asked me, and really us. It's such an honor. I feel like we are finally, getting into spaces. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.